All right, so thank you everyone for attending. My name, I know a lot of you on the call. Some we work with currently, some we worked with in the past. So my name is Tim Turner, and I'm Director of Business Insights. And today we're going to talk about um, reporting and budgeting planning solutions for Business Central, primarily public cloud, really talking about in the context of public cloud. So many customers have been moving or implementing Business Central Public Cloud over the years. Some customers are still on their on-prem solution, but one hopefully have a plan to move into the cloud. So I've also got Chris on the line as a co-organizer. I think you can ask questions and do all of that sort of things, and he'll be messaging me if I make any mess ups. But firstly, let's get started. And first, we'll just talk about what we do as Business Insights. So, as you know, previously I was previously a distributor for Jet Reports prior to the Insight Software acquisition. And now I am a director of Business Insights, which is an independent organization which is focused on helping customers with their reporting, analytics, and budgeting challenges. So although we've been specializing in the Microsoft Dynamics ERP, in particular NAV and BC, we don't implement Business Central. So a lot of you will have partners, or maybe even be partners who implement Business Central and add on a reporting tool as part of that. That's all good, but our specialist is in that reporting area. And so I guess the skills that we like to offer, which we think are really important to being successful with your reporting, is, knowing the tool and how it works, but also understanding the BC knowledge and, all the tables and that sort of thing. And also most of our consultants will have very solid accounting experience, because that's where a lot of our work is done. Firstly, these are the products that we're just going to talk about today. Some of the products I'll talk about, some of the products I'll just quickly pop in and show you little bits about them. If you do want to learn any more about any of the things that we showed today, please don't hesitate to reach out. This is really just giving you an overview of the landscape on what the pros and cons are for each product. So you can use that in your considerations for the future. So the products that we'll talk about today, the first one, probably the most obvious, is Business Central Native. If it does everything you need to do in there, then you probably don't need another tool. The other one is Power BI, and I would imagine almost all of you would have heard messaging around Power BI. If not, you may be using that to a certain extent anyway. Then we'll talk about some of the Insight Software products, Jet Reports and Jet Analytics. Many of you will already know those products, or particularly Jet Reports, quite well. And we'll talk about Bizview as well, which is a web-based budgeting and planning solution. And then we'll talk about some products from other vendors, being Aimplan, TimeXtender, and Cosmos. So a couple of these are new entrants into the market, but although they're new products, the people behind them are not new and have been involved in the space for a long period of time. So I'm pretty excited about telling you about some of those today. So here we've got as you see, obviously there's a lot more products that are available for for Business Central. What this is here is, we're talking about reporting, we're talking about budgeting and planning, and we may be talking about a bigger picture of analytics. So, in cases where you might need to or want to move out beyond just Business Central reporting and dashboarding into integrating other data sources, etc. So you'll see these are all color-coded, and I haven't just done this to make it look nice. There is some methodology to this. The grey are really primarily reporting. So all of the grey ones are primarily reporting, okay? The orange are really primarily dashboarding, being the Power BI visuals and the like, okay? The blue ones are primarily planning and budgeting, etc. But literally every budgeting and planning tool that exists also includes reporting capability. So we don't, in any planning and budgeting tool that doesn't include that probably won't be around for very long, because you if you plan something, you've got to actually see the results of that plan. And then down the bottom is the green is Jet Analytics and TimeXtender, primarily around data modeling and management of data. Now, there's always a lot of crossover between these products. So, for example, in Power BI, you have data modeling within Power BI, and Aimplan and Bizview. You can do data modeling within there as well. So, really, just to give you a landscape on what the primary focus is of these products. Okay, so the first thing we want to consider when we're going to the cloud is, fundamentally. When we were on-prem, we were probably in the finance office, and next door were the servers. And when we ran a report, it went next door to the server, got the data, and brought it back. Now that we're in the cloud, and we're all in that same domain, so our IT has sort of given us access to that because we're in the office. World being a different place now, we're sitting in our office, or we may be sitting at home, and we're running a report off, say, Business Central Public Cloud, and that may be in another side of the city, or it may be in another city, or it may be in another country, as it is for us people that live in New Zealand. So the first thing you need, so that's one, is the distance between where we are and where our data is. And the second one is, okay, well, now that it's in public cloud and not in a privately hosted, security becomes paramount. And so mostly everything in public cloud is not accessible to anyone unless there is some sort of API, which is way of external solutions being able to connect to that. And the API does have, it doesn't necessarily expose every field and every table in your database. That if it shows you everything that you need, that's great. If it doesn't, then you might need to get more work done to expose those. The other issue is that distance between the query place and the data place. So again, if I'm in Wellington in New Zealand, my Business Central is in, say, Melbourne. When I query, it goes to Melbourne, gets the data, and brings the results back. Okay, so if it's having to do that, and if it's having to bring data back, then that can take time. And then there's another concept called latency, and latency is slightly different from movement of data. It's more about the time between when I ask a question and when I get an answer. Okay, this is normally measured in milliseconds, and it might be 2 milliseconds, or it might be 10 milliseconds or 20 milliseconds, which doesn't sound a lot, but depending on how many queries you do, that can add up. Okay, so different tools handle things in different ways. So, for example, One tool might do, 100 queries or 500 queries. They have to wait for each one to come back. Another tool might just do one query. Okay, so the first thing is, why would you want to consider using an external tool? Well, the first thing is only if you need to. Okay, so what are the signs of whether, if Business Central does everything and you've got all the reports in there and there's no, I've got everything I need when I need it, the way it looks and everything, then that's fine. These are some of the signs that a tool might help. One is when you find yourself copying data. So you might be in Business Central, you might be constantly exporting data, doing some work within that and sending it off. The second thing is repeating tasks. Okay, so I myself have Business Central, and I do, I go in and I go and export data out to Excel and do something with it. But I'll only do that if it's kind of a one-off, right? If I have to do that every month, and do all this and export 5 things, then I'm repeating tasks. And because I'm a human being, especially me, generally it might cause the potential for error. Okay, so every time the human's involved in doing something, then that's a potential for error. And looking from the sort of business side of this, if you've got data inconsistency, so if people are, questioning, okay, well, I thought that number doesn't look right, it should be this number, or if 2 people come to the meeting and they've got the same or similar report which show different numbers, then, that could be a result of people using different logic and that sort of thing. Data security concerns, so, exporting data and putting it into spreadsheets and sending that around means you're actually holding data in spreadsheets and sharing that with people. And the last is sharing this with, the ability to be able to share data outside of Business Central. So this, for example, could be, Business Central, predominantly a finance system. We've got 5 users in Business Central, but then we've got 50 managers that we want to send out a report to. I don't want to get them to have to log into Business Central. I just want them to see the report. So that's where a tool can assist with that. Okay, so we're just going to start talking about each of the different tools that I went through earlier, and I'll flick into demo mode for some of them. This one I'll quickly flick into a demo mode, but within Business Central itself, first thing you've got is the standard out-of-the-box reports. Okay, so that's the quickest and easiest way. If there's a report that does what you need, that's nice and easy. And then we have financial reports, they were called account schedules back in the NAV days. This is where you can configure rows and columns and create sort of a financial type report using GL entries and GL budget entries and that sort of thing. Extract data. Probably already know about that. That's where, most lists you can just push that out into Excel, and that also allows for function to be able to change data in there and then push that back into BC, which can be handy in some circumstances. And then also list analysis mode. So I'm just going to flick over into Business Central. If we go to here. And what you can see here is that I am in Business Central. And the first one here is we've got all of those reports. So if we look at those reports, I won't go in and show those, but we've got, a lot of these reports have been around for quite some time. Some of them are, look a lot nicer than they used to. But really, it's really just about browsing around and see if any of those reports would do that for you. So the second thing is financial reports. So if we go to financial reports here we've got these are just some that are out of the box financial reports. And for example, this one here is an income statement. You've got a row definition and some column definitions, which you can configure yourself. And then you can view that financial report, and then that will just show you, what that report looks like. So here you can see I've got some row numbers with a structure of my income statement, etc. So that's your financial reports. And then the last thing I just wanted to show you within Business Central is this analysis mode. So here, what you see now is just my customer list, very small customer list in the demo company. But if we go up here, we can enter into analysis mode. And when we go into analysis mode, what we can do is we can create, you'll see up the top here, there's analysis 1 and analysis 2. So I can create these. So this analysis 1, and I created analysis 2 yesterday. I didn't give it a name, but you can have, if you've got like, say, for example, your customer list or item list, you can have like pre-saved ways of looking at that. And so if we go up here to analysis 2, you can see all of the fields, the values, and we can, change that to pivot mode, and talk, and have analysis filters, etc. on that. So that's like just some nice sort of easy, quick win type things that you might be able to get out of Business Central itself. All right, so back to my PowerPoint. The next thing I'm going to talk about here is Jet Reports. So Jet Reports is, as you know, it's a Excel-based add-in, and you install Jet Reports on your desktop, you activate the add-in, and then you set up a data source which may connect to Business Central or NAV on-prem, and it queries that database when you build the reports within Excel, and you query that database. So the accountants like this because it's in Excel. A couple of things to note here is when we move to the cloud, we probably notice that there is the reports take longer to run. And that's really because fundamentally, we're sitting here on our desktop, we're sending a request or many requests either to Business Central to get some data, bring it back into the desktop, and then use that information to compile the report. So that can be a consideration with Jet Reports. Another I am advised that there is a web version of Jet Reports being offered. Some of you may know about Jet Hub, which you can deploy that on premise, which allows you to share and run reports via a web interface. The web version is really like an Insight Software hosted version of that. I'm not sure how that will perform in relation to the Jet Reports add-in, but that is something that they're doing. I think as is available. Another consideration is that data modeling is effectively being done in each report, and this is, I guess, this is a consideration with just standalone reporting tools. So that's sometimes when you can get inconsistencies between two reports. They might not be both wrong, but they might just be different or use different assumptions. So Jet Analytics is it's paired with Jet Reports, but I do like to think of them as different products itself, even though if you buy Jet Analytics, you automatically get Jet Reports add-on. Okay, so some people actually buy Jet Reports and then, Jet Analytics, and they may or may not even use Jet Reports depending on what their requirements are. Jet Analytics is really all about the data. So it's a data warehouse solution which brings all of your data together. Times when you may want to consider Jet Analytics is if you've got, say, Business Central. Jet Analytics comes with an out-of-the-box data model for Business Central, and then you can add additional data sources to that, and build out a model. So, for example, Jet Analytics will have an out-of-the-box sales queue, and you might want to connect to Microsoft Dynamics CRM and get some information about our pipeline or our future sales. So then you've got my history and my forecast, and then that presents that into a data model which the business can understand. Now, Jet Analytics is deployed on either, and if we're talking in the context of the cloud, so fundamentally, Jet Analytics has always been deployed on an on-premise SQL Server. So that's just a SQL Server database where you have your data warehouse, and you can also have what's called an analysis services cube, which is really the slice and dice, which is kind of similar to like a semantic model within Power BI. In fact, it uses the same sort of technology. So most organizations who have Jet Analytics have deployed to that. You can also deploy into Azure SQL. So rather than having your own SQL server, you can go into Azure and create a Azure SQL database, and you can deploy into that database. And you can also deploy into Azure Analysis Services. Okay, so that again is a cloud solution. So it is possible to have Jet Analytics without having your own SQL server. You can use the cloud services. What it does not extend to is some of the more recent modern data architectures which Microsoft Azure provides, such as Fabric and Data Lake and the Lakehouse, etc. And that's where we'll just quickly talk about TimeXtender. So this here is just a very simple diagram of the data flow of Jet Analytics. You've got your database, goes into, you do like transformations, and you've got many tables, and then you simplify that into a data warehouse. And fundamentally, all data modeling sort of concepts that I preach is this idea of a single source of truth. Okay, so rather than going to all your source and having different ways of getting your data, we kind of agree on the way that your data is compiled and place that in a data warehouse where it's very simple and structured, and this is how it is, and this is how the measures are calculated. So the organization agrees on that, and we call that the single source of truth. And a cube and tabular model is, the data warehouse is a database. Cube in a tabular model is really takes that a step further and has what's called dimensions and measures, and really allows for you just to do that slice and dice. So drag in a dimension, drag in a measure, some measures. For example, we could have the amount and the amount prior year, and the budget prior year, and the budget variant as measures already set up, and we don't need to create those sorts of calculations. Okay, so we'll just quickly talk about TimeXtender now. So Jet Analytics, it's actually a bit of a story behind this. Jet Analytics is developed by a company called TimeXtender and has done for 15 years. And TimeXtender has, fundamentally it's the same product, but TimeXtender has extended this to take advantage of the full cloud solution. And one of the big upsides of using these sorts of tools is that you can future-proof yourself using this type of tool. So an example of that is we had a customer, Komatsu in Australia, who were deploying to Azure SQL, and then that was quite a large sort of deployment, and they wanted to upgrade that to another. It was actually a new SQL technology that Microsoft offered called SQL Managed Instance. So literally, we changed the endpoint, and then we deployed that, and it wrote all the necessary code for that. So as you can see here, it's the same type of concept. The only slight difference is that it has what's called a ingest service. So we might set up, data sources to many different places, and we ingest that data and place it all into a storage area in its raw form. And that can either be on a SQL server, but it can also be in Azure Data Lake Gen 2, Microsoft Fabric Lakehouse, so these new types of technologies. And as another example of the future proofing ability, when you are deploying into SQL, it writes SQL code. If you want to change that to Microsoft Fabric Lakehouse, it uses Spark notebooks. So TimeXtender, by actually changing that endpoint, instead of creating the SQL queries, it will create the Spark notebooks. So that's a new language, well, relatively new compared to TSQL. And it kind of takes one of the headache. You don't have to find someone that knows all of that type of stuff. And also, this can deliver into a tabular endpoint, which is just the analysis services, but also to directly into Power BI semantic model endpoint. So you can deploy into there, and then that's all ready for you to build your dashboards on. Also has, for people that use other existing technologies, visualization tools such as Click and Tabu, it can deploy into those technologies as well. So TimeXtender is really a tool that is useful for if you're really looking at having a larger BI analytics platform in the Microsoft ecosystem, integrating data sources in addition to Business Central. Business Central is just their finance, but we want to bring operational data and sales data and a whole lot of other stuff into here. This is a tool that can really escalate that development process. So, the big offering here, and the same with Jet Analytics, but in a sort of different context, is that it just reduces that development time. You get from A to B a lot faster. Okay, so TimeXtender has also been on a little bit of an acquisition trail as well. And so they've got some additional products, which I just briefly want to just let you know about. They all work with Jet Analytics as well. The first one there is data governance and data quality. So that's where you log in and you can set up rules to say, my item number must have 3 codes that start with this and then a dash and then another code. It must have a dimension attribute of this. If it doesn't, then let me know. And if it's missing a value, do this. If it's a duplicate value, do this, or notify this person. So that's really about managing your data governance and your quality. The second tool here is master data management. So that's really where you want to sort of have a good set of master data. So for example, we might have customers in CRM and customers in Business Central, and we need a tool for managing, what the master record will be, which will serve all of the analytics across the environment. And the last one here is orchestration. And for those that already have Jet Analytics, it's really about managing the execution packages. So there's a tool which allows you to manage that and monitor that, give you insights into what the issue is, and then you can go and reprocess and have rules for reprocessing some of that to make sure that your data flows are working and consistent. All right, so that's really about Jet Analytics TimeXtender, which is all of the data management stuff. Now we're going to talk about Bizview, and Bizview is another insight software product, which is a planning and budgeting tool. It also has good reporting capability as well, and good user permissioning and management and that sort of thing. So one of the things with regard to just reporting for Bizview is I find, when I say Jet Reports, it's a great flexible tool. If you have 200 people all wanting to run the same report, but everyone runs it for a different department, this is something where Bizview can kind of help with that, because you just manage the permissions in another area, and then that surfaces itself for each of the users based on what you've given. So one report over, say, 200 departments is still just one report, but it has filtered differently for each person. Bizview does have a good integration to BC. What they've done is they've taken the kernel out of the Jet Analytics data integration and put that into the product. What that means is it will expose every field and every table, so you can bring in, if your data's in BC, then you can bring it through into this solution. Okay, so unlike some other APIs which only has some fields and some tables. So I'll just quickly show you just one little bit about on Bizview. I won't go into too much detail in here, but just a couple of other points I want to make about that is we actually view Bizview very much. It's a good planning and reporting tool, but we actually kind of view it as a good development platform. So you can do many things on this. You can just create your own tables for, for example, here I might have health and safety, lost time injuries. I might just create a table for that, and people go and enter in the lost time injuries, and then that can be applied to, other parts of the solution. Other things we've done in here quite extensively is there's allocations, for example. So if I just go, I've got Bizview here. So very quickly, we've got it has a lot of workflows, which is about if you're managing a lot of people. Commenting is very good, so we can set up comments and have those inside of actual reports and dashboards and the like. The other little thing I just want to quickly show you here is in here we've got like a report package. And a report package is where you you can create many reports and build it up into a package. So here I've just as an example. What you probably didn't see there is it flashed through. It actually ran 3 reports, and then it rendered each one of these reports as a tab in here. So I've got a profit and loss, a balance sheet, and a cash flow. And then another thing that we've got here is the ability to create sub-reports or drill-through reports. So you've got the drill-through, which just gives you a list of all of the entries that make that up. But you can drill into a sub-report that you can then design in your own way to in a format that you like. So you can have not just one, there was just one here, but you could have, breakdown by product or breakdown by customer or something like that. So that's a couple of nice things within the Bizview solution. In addition to the to obviously the planning and budgeting capabilities. Another just quick thing I just want to show you here is these jobs here, and this is really about the flexibility or the platform that we can create jobs that can kind of do anything. So process data, update something or do whatever, or get data from another system and that sort of thing. So these jobs are sort of really one of the things that can give it a lot of flexibility. Okay, so that was Bizview. This here is just out of the Bizview slides, just bottom up, top down budgeting project, demand forecast, purchase planning, all the sorts of things that you'd expect from a sort of good planning solution. So now I want to talk about some of the new products. I think I'm saving the best till for last. The first thing we're going to talk about here is a new product. It's not new, it's a couple of years old. It's been around 2 or 3 years. The people are definitely not new. They've been in the reporting and sort of game for many years, working on other such products. And they built this from the ground up because it's not, a solution that was created 20 years ago. This is okay. This is for BC Public Cloud. So if you want to get this and hook it up to your NAV 2009, I think you're out of luck. This is for cloud, so it's built from for the public cloud. It's easy to set up and deploy. So we set this up on a customer the other day. Set up the webinar. It was 30 minutes. We set up the environment, from nothing. Set up the environment, hooked up to BC. Set up the users, deployed the add-in into the users' online Excel, and process the data warehouse. And the reason for that is because it's all kind of cloud-based. We don't have to go to people's machines and install add-ins or anything like that. The performance is good because we don't have that client server type thing where we're sitting on our local desktop running a report and it's having to go to Australia to get the data and bring it back. It has a pre-built data warehouse with incremental loads. So for a customer we did for this, they had quite a few GL entries in there. First time it took a while to run. And then it takes like a minute or two, a couple of minutes, I think, to update the whole data warehouse. There's also a button that lets you manually update. So one of the frustrations a lot of accountants most have is posting a journal and then they want that data available in the warehouse to be able to run their reports so they can get them out, go home. There's a tool for managing the data model. It's by no means as comprehensive as Jet Analytics or TimeXtender. But having said that, it's got everything that is needed in the user interface for most of what you do. And another really nice thing here is Power BI data integration. So one thing you can do is you can see Power BI dashboards from within the Cosmos portal. And then there's also an API to expose that data model in the dashboard for dashboard development. So this one I will just show you, go in and show you a couple of things in here. So this, I'm just log into the Cosmos portal. So everything is run outside of this portal. Another sort of feature or point to note is that there is only one way to author reports, and that's via this way. There's not, a whole lot of wizards where you need to choose the best way. So here we've got reports. There's a gallery of reports that you can download. This here is, for example, is my income statement by month. These are like checked out. So essentially, these reports are all, they're all sort of published reports. And then if you want to go and amend it, you can check it out and then go and author that. So, for example, this one's checked out, and I can then just edit this on in Excel Online. As I mentioned, there's the add-in is actually published via your Microsoft tenant. So there is no install on your desktop, although the desktop application does have the add-in. So what you can see here is that we have the Cosmos add-in, and then over on the right we have a task pane where we can, go and use this for, for creating our sheet lists and range lists and that sort of thing. So this is where all of the authoring is done. And then once you've authored that, then you can preview that. So essentially, this is all in the cloud. The files are actually stored in a SharePoint directory, which is set up on your solution, and the source files. And then when you run that, I can just then go in and run a report. So this one here is published, and I can run that report, and it will run that and then open that in the web browser, or you can download that. Also, it has all the scheduling capabilities and batch scheduling as well. Next thing I'll do is just go and talk a little bit about the data management. This here is what we have is we have a Business Central data source, and then this is the data model. And then we have staging, transformation. So these are all of the fields that within your Business Central application, and then where you can pick which fields and tables you want to bring in. You do transformations, and then you create, the transformations are in here, and then that comes into like a data model. So, for example, if I go into sales transactions, you'll see in here, I'm bringing in data from a number of different tables into this one sales transaction table. So that's kind of, the data modeling part. So all done in the same place. Administration, very, you've got users, full users who can do a bunch of things, and light users who can just run reports. So if we go back up to reporting here, then in here, there's another tab, which is Power BI, right? So in here, I've got all my workspaces, and these are all of the Power BI dashboards that I have. As you can see, a lot of them are kind of rubbish, but this is all the Power BI dashboards. And then when I view that, it just goes and opens that up within the Power BI desktop. So that's something which is a lot of customers were asking for, because just want one place to go and get all of your stuff. Okay. Another nice thing, if we flick over into Power BI, there's up in Power BI, I think. there's this button here, new dashboard. So essentially what that does is that creates a little API into Power BI. And so if I go into Power BI here, which I probably need to do that, we've got a data source, and then I can, actually here it is here, already there. So this here, this is your data warehouse from Cosmos, and what you see there are all of the relationships that already exist. So you can just pull that data into Power BI, and then that takes. I'll just cancel that because it's already there, and then that takes, that just can be used to create your visuals. And although this looks complicated, what it actually is just shows that all the tables are already have relationships. So that just makes it a lot easier when you're creating your Power BI models. So this is a nice way if your API straight into Business Central doesn't have what you need. Cosmos can help overcome that hurdle if you have Cosmos. All right, so finally, the last product I just want to talk about, and hopefully we'll have some time for questions, is Aimplan. So Aimplan, again, is a budgeting and planning tool. Big differences, and again, it's a couple of years old. But the people have been working in this space for a long time, forever. And they really know what they're doing when it comes to budgeting and planning. So the big thing about this is actually all inside. It's additional capability inside of Power BI. So if you're already using Power BI, and even if you're doing financial reporting in Power BI, then this can be a really good enhancement to that. Two big things here. The first is the obvious one, that it allows for budgeting and planning in Power BI, and it lets you write back data, so that can be used in other reports and dashboards. But also, one of the visuals that they have is allows you to create nice financial type reports, and we'll show you that within in about 2 seconds. So some of this functionality that it has, commenting, it's got a nice commenting process, process control and approval, audit trail, allocating and suggestions, and all of that about how you want to get your startup data. So what I'll do now is I'll just quickly go into this Aimplan Power BI demo. So first thing to notice here is that we are in app.powerbi, and this is a dashboard here. This is really just a demo dashboard, but you can see you can do employee hours, project budget, etc. So I just want to show you a couple of things here. The first one is what we generally get when we try and create our own profit and loss in Power BI. So here you've got a hierarchy, but these hierarchies, they work really well for sales, but they're not quite that cool for finance, because we're a little bit peculiar in the way that we want to stop halfway down and put in a gross margin, and then have a gross margin percentage, and then carry on and do our expenses, and then have another subtotal, and then have a tax, and then have our net profit after loss. So that allows us to take this type of report into this type of report. And this here, if you look at this is actually saying this GL account code, break that down by my locations. And then I've got, these might be our account subcategories or something something like that. And then here we've got our gross profit percentage, which is obviously that minus that. And then we have a gross margin percentage, which is that divided by that, I would assume. Then we have operational costs, we have EBITDA, depreciation, net profit, and then we might want our results by cost center. So that allows us to sort of really customize those rows, and the same sort of thing with columns as well. So I've got this here for each month, I think it is, and then I've got a total by my cost center. And then we have a commenting. So obviously, a lot of organisations, obviously you do your monthly profit and loss, and then people need to, or probably possibly should go in and provide some comment on why something's no good, or why it's good, or why it's changed, or whatever. And so this visual allows you to add commenting to that as well. So that's kind of like the reporting type visual. And then just very quickly, I'm going to show you how you do your sort of budgeting in here. So this is the similar type of visual. Excuse me. And so here we've got like our last year full costs, our full year. So if we change a number here to say 6,000 or 6,500, then that allocates, and we can see that that's changed. Sometimes people, like the boss guy, comes along and just says, I want these to be 12 million. No, 13 million. And then what that will do, I've just changed the total, and then it just allocates that based on a prorating allocation. So that allows for some nice sort of top-down type stuff here. On these figures here, and we obviously can change these, add comments, but on these figures here, we can take data and we can apply a suggestion from. So we can say, okay, I want you to figure out what the last 3 years were, or you can AI assistant costs and that sort of thing, and we can allocate that on certain allocations. So it might be based on last year, it might be based on even, it might be based on anything else that you might like to look at. So that's a nice planning tool. With I say it's a nice planning tool within Power BI, but it's also a very nice reporting tool. The way it lays out those visuals is really good. And obviously, you integrate that with your other standard Power BI visuals. Up here, you've got your suggestions and that sort of thing. So that was basically my overview of reporting and planning tools for Business Central Public Cloud or Public Cloud. I will just see if I can know how to use this. If there's any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. And I think there's a Q&A here somewhere. So if there's any questions, I've got a couple of questions here. Can Cosmos connect to Fabric? It's kind of the other way around. You create your data set, Cosmos doesn't connect. So Cosmos can connect to Business Central and Azure SQL database, and then they're also looking at developing a connection into the Dataverse. So I'm not sure about Fabric itself. Probably not at this point, but it's possible that could come at a later point. I'm assuming that question's relating to Lakehouse, but the Cosmos is really for that mid. I wouldn't view that as a full enterprise BI solution. It's excellent for Business Central and some other data sources, pulling that together and creating a data model, which you can then write your own reports in with Cosmos or consume in Power BI along with other data. Would you only choose Jet Analytics if you are still on Navision? We plan to move to BC. We now support you. So Jet Analytics, one of the nice things about Jet Analytics and TimeXtender is that you could connect up to that, and I'll just talk a little bit about the relationship between Jet and TimeXtender as well. A lot of, Jet Analytics has been around a long time, and when it first came out, there was no such thing as Business Central or cloud, properly anyway. So everything was connected into an on-prem SQL database. What most of our customers have done, or the combinations of adding, but you can actually go into the connection or nav and change that to a Business Central connection. And then instead of reading the on-prem nav database, it reads your public cloud database. Okay, there's also a lot of other ways of handling that as well, because quite often when people go into cloud, if they've had it on-prem for a long time, we preserve that on-prem data and then bring that into a new connection which feeds both the history from on-prem and the new data from BC Cloud. And then is Cosmos a better solution for cloud? I guess one thing I meant to mention earlier is it's really about understand. I wanted to give you a good overview of what the solutions are available and what might be good when you move to the cloud, but it's not necessarily this one's better in the cloud and that one's better on-prem. Cosmos is designed for the cloud, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best solution. It really comes down to are your requirements. If it's just reporting from your BC data, Cosmos is a great solution in the cloud. If you already have Jet reports, are there going to be any problems? If they're not, why bother? If everything's still fine and you're happy, then that's fine. So do you have a lot of data modeling requirements outside of BC or even within BC, with lots of custom tables and that sort of thing? If that's the case, then you might be looking at one of the data management platforms, and then that might take care of the data side. What's the best tool for the reporting side? Okay. All right, so any more questions? Hang on, new posts here. Aimplan doesn't send the data back to BC. Again, not again, but if you wanted to get that data back in BC, essentially what you would do is when you finished your budgeting cycle. So generally, a budgeting is a moving process, and then you close it off. Essentially, once you've closed it off, it should be kind of a one-time thing, is that you would be able to just export that out and then just import it into BC as a static budget. That's if you're needing that in BC for a lot of people might need the budgets in BC because it's controlling expenditure and that sort of thing. Depending on the reporting tool that you're using, if you were using Aimplan and surfacing data from BC into Aimplan, you might just use Aimplan as your reporting. There may not be any need to put it back into BC, but again, there may absolutely be a need to put it into BC, where it's just a process that it wouldn't take long, but it is the process that you'd need to push back into BC. So it doesn't hold that data all the time in BC. It's just it would be a copy of the data that we have that's created within Power BI. So please don't hesitate to reach out and ask any questions if you want to have a look at any of the products more closely or multiple products more closely. We're happy to have a conversation. So thank you very much and have a great day.